Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 12th, 2026 meeting of the Escondido Planning Commission. We will go ahead and call this meeting to order. If you would please rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Could we get the roll call, please?
Chair Spear.
Here.
Vice Chair Stevie.
Here.
Commissioner Weiler.
Here.
Commissioner Jester. Commissioner Corral. Commissioner Recaro.
Here.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Here.
Thank you. We will call for approval of the minutes for the April 28, 2026 Planning Commission meeting. Are there any exceptions or recommended changes to the minutes? All right. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
A motion to approve the minutes of April 28th, 2026.
I second.
Could we call for a vote?
Motion to approve the April 28th, 2026 meeting minutes. Chair Spear.
Yes.
Vice Chair Stevie.
Yes.
Commissioner Weiler.
Yes.
Commissioner Recaro.
Abstain.
And Commissioner Gustafson.
Yes.
The vote is 4-0 to approve the April 28th, 2026 meeting minutes.
Thank you. We will move on to, let's see, any written or oral communications? Not on the agenda?
No.
Thank you. We'll move on to current business. We have item number 2 on the agenda as a public hearing, PL 25-0096, Valley Parkway and Center City Parkway. Before we start, any disclosures by the Planning Commission?
Yeah, I did drive through the site and kind of walked around a little bit. And then also I had a brief discussion with one of the representatives of the applicant. That's it.
Any other disclosures? Okay. We do have a presentation by staff. We'll go ahead and turn time.
Thank you, Chair. And good evening, Commissioners. My name is Alex Rangel, Associate Planner for the City of Escondido's Planning Services. And I'll be presenting to you planning case numbers PL 25-0096 through PL 25-0099, Valley Parkway and Center City Parkway 94-unit townhome condominiums. The project before you involves a tentative subdivision map for the merging of 2 existing physical lots into one, and to allow for individual ownership of the townhome units as airspace condominiums. A planned development permit, which includes a master and precise plan as required by the Downtown Specific Plan, and a design review permit for the new construction of the residential units. Tonight's presentation agenda will include the following topics: a background of the project site itself, an introduction to the project, the project's plans and specific analysis, the city's environmental determination for the project, and the recommended actions for this evening. The project site itself is addressed as 510 to 520 West Valley Parkway. Is approximately 3.51 acres on the northwestern corner of Center City Parkway and West Valley Parkway. The project site is currently occupied by an approximately 5,900 square foot retail building, a 7,180 square foot multi-tenant commercial building, and 4 self-storage warehouse buildings totaling approximately 30,600 square feet. All existing structures would be demolished as part of this project. Additionally, the project site is identified within the city's housing element on the Suitable Sites Inventory, or SSI, which identifies properties as being suitable for accommodating housing units during this current cycle. I'll be speaking to the Suitable Sites Inventory and the further density provisions later in this presentation. The project site is zoned SP for a specific plan under the general plan designation of SPA 9 for the Downtown Specific Plan. Within the Downtown Specific Plan, the site is located within the Gateway Transit District, which is intended to accommodate employee-intensive commercial and professional services, high-density residential uses, which would benefit from the district's proximity to employment and major thoroughfares. In March of 2025, the applicant, Stormbird, on behalf of Storm Properties, submitted a development project shown here of 94 residential units across 7 different building types, totaling 14 buildings. Please note that the site plan before you has been rotated for demonstrative purposes. Each structure will accommodate 4 to 6 individual 3-story townhome units developed as 3 to 4 bedroom units ranging between approximately 1,350 square feet to 1,750 square feet. The project will be taking primary access from West Valley Parkway in the form of a private driveway in the center of the project site. And it will also take access from a shared private alleyway to the west. The project will accommodate a total of 204 parking spaces in the form of a 2-car garage for each unit and 16 guest parking spaces. The proposed parking includes a reduction in parking requested pursuant to Assembly Bill 2097, as detailed in your staff report under the Parking Analysis section. Shown here is a rendering of the project site taken specifically from West Valley Parkway, which will serve as the primary frontage for the project. And here we have an additional rendering from Center City Parkway, demonstrating elevations of a majority of the buildings and the landscaping and fencing along the Escondido Creek Trail bike path. Shown here is a representative elevation of the project site, as it shows the primary elevation on West Valley Parkway and 3 of the 14 buildings throughout the project. The project site is located within the Mercado Area Overlay Plan, which encourages the use of early Californian and Hispanic themes in our architecture to accommodate lively, tourist-oriented uses and residential development. The project incorporates designs inspired by architect Irving Gill, presenting a modern interpretation of the Spanish Santa Barbara style, presenting use of materials such as decorative stucco, clay tile roofing, wood, metal decorative railing elements, ceramic tile, and various other decorative elements throughout the project. The scale and massing of the proposed buildings is consistent with the surrounding existing development, such as the residential development adjacent to the western boundary of the project and an entitled development to the southwest of the project. While the western development will be taller in height, being approximately 65 feet in height and 5 total stories, versus this project being only 37 feet in height and 3 stories, the frontal planes, the massing abutting the project's frontage, and the overall building design as it is adjacent to West Valley Parkway would provide a consistent massing and scaling along West Valley Parkway. And here we have the demonstrated proposed landscaping for the project, with improvements in the dedicated open space. The Mercado Area Overlay encouraged a heightened paseo pathway and pedestrian plaza landscaping design, with enhanced amenities for pedestrian travel throughout the project site. The bulk of the design of the residential buildings incorporates heavily landscaped paseo pathways between the building frontages. Landscaping is provided pursuant to Article 62, Water Efficient Landscape Regulations of the City of Escondido's zoning code, and the city's adopted Climate Action Plan, which requires adequate street trees throughout the project site and 98 individual trees throughout the development, provided as a mix of canopy, accent, and screening trees. The project also incorporates approximately 28,200 square feet of open space mixed between the common space throughout the project site and private space provided through private patios and balcony spaces for the residential units. Shown here are the typical paseo landscaping designs throughout the project and one of the major common areas on the bottom left of your screen. This also demonstrates the common walkway paths for future residents of the project. Planning staff would now like to provide additional analysis regarding the following topics of interest of density and the suitable sites inventory needs for the project. The project site is located within a portion of the Gateway Transit District, which permits multifamily development of up to 100 dwelling units per acre. While there are no minimum densities identified within the downtown specific plan, the prescribed residential density throughout the specific plan ranges from 45 dwelling units to 100 dwelling units per acre. As the project is not developing to its full capacity, the city will be requiring the project to transfer unused units to the downtown specific plan's density credit pool. A total of 257 units will be transferred to the pool, bringing the current credit pool to an available 1,239 units. A deed restriction will be required to document this transfer. Additionally, the project site is identified within the housing element's suitable sites inventory, or again, SSI, presuming a build-out of 217 units. As the project is proposing only 94 units, provision of no net loss law apply to the project. A complete analysis was conducted with findings as detailed in Table 4 of your staff report. Oh, one more page. As part of the no net loss review for the project and all projects reviewed throughout the city, Planning Services maintains running tabulations of the city's SSI capacity, showing capacity to needs buffer and the remaining needs for the city's regional housing needs allocation, or RHNA. As detailed within the general plan conformance section of staff report and table 4 of the housing element analysis section, the city continues to comply with the provisions of no net loss with sufficient capacity to meet the city's RHNA's needs with the approval of this project. Staff has analyzed the project under the criteria of Class 32, Infill Development Project Exemption, pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15332. During analysis of the project, staff identified a potential concern related to cultural resources due to the proximity of the project site to the Escondido Creek and the presence of alluvial soil deposits on the project site. The applicant provided a supplemental memorandum to the project from Helix Environmental Services, which concludes that while the area is generally sensitive to the, lost my spot here. While the area is generally sensitive to these resources, no resources as defined by CEQA were identified within the project area. The project is not likely to affect any resources, nor is it subject to unusual circumstances. However, the applicant has chosen to include cultural resource monitoring during the grading activities and has included monitoring standards on their preliminary grading plan. Staff has included these same standards as conditions of approval E6 for the project. Therefore, pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, the proposed project is categorically exempt from further environmental review, subject to CEQA Guidelines Section 15332 for infill development projects. Complete details can be reviewed in the draft notice of exemption in your staff report. Development Services and Planning Services would like to request that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number 2026-04, recommending to the City Council approval of the project subject to the conditions of approval. And this concludes staff's presentation. Planning and engineering services are available and for any questions, and the applicant team and their staff are also available for introduction and any additional questions that the commission may have.
Thank you, Alex. Fine job. Thank you for all that work. Before we get into questions for staff, does the applicant wish to make a presentation or provide comment?
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Spear, Vice Chair Steve. My name is Jason Simmons with Consultants Collaborative, and I'm the land planning for this project, and I'd like to introduce the applicant.
Yeah, hi. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jay Aluwalia. I'm the president of Storm Properties, and I wanted to take this quick opportunity to thank everybody for giving us the opportunity to present our project over here today. And thank you to Alex, Sally, Veronica, and Owen for all the work we have done with them. Really appreciate their feedback to us as we have worked to improve this project and bring it to the city today. And our hope is this is kind of like the missing middle project that everybody's kind of looking for. We're trying to put in higher density, for sale, townhome kind of product. And if you look at it, we're like almost 27 due to the acre, mainly trying to put in a lot of tandem unit projects that help increase the density with the goal of bringing, long-term residents who have the, long-term interest in the city, who are part of the city and looking to grow the city and be there as part of the city, versus trying to build maybe a little bit more higher density, but more studios and one-bedroom apartments, which is a lot more transient in nature by the nature of being apartments. So we thought it would be a great addition to the downtown to bring families over there who can enjoy, all the great facilities. The transit center is like 4 minutes walk, right? So you can take the transit to work and not have to drive all the time. You have a great shopping center right across the street, so you can walk to the shopping center and see a movie or have dinner over there in the downtown. So our thought is to bring all of that together with this project. And again, like I said, we appreciate this opportunity, and any questions for us, we have our team over here to answer anything that you may have questions on. So again, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant or for staff by the commission?
So thank you both for your presentations. I appreciate it. There are a couple of things I wanted to comment on and get some feedback on, if possible. One of the things that stands out to me right now, and I'll be transparent. I'm currently a no, but I'm a soft no. So here's why. I'm totally on board with the missing middle. I think that that's desperately needed. I'm in my 40s. Most of my peers can't afford to live here, and missing middle helps make that a reality. I love that these are condos and not apartments for exactly the reasons you articulated. It encourages rootedness. It encourages building up. The reason I'm a soft no right now is because I do feel like this is a very important visual space for the city. Center City, Valley Parkway, those are high-profile areas. We are currently, as a commission, working to try and make Grand Avenue come more alive. We've got a subcommittee right now working on revitalization for Grand. And this is an area that can really tell the story of Escondido as both a historic place, but also an up-and-coming, a rising place to live. I think that the geographic movement's pretty clear. The demographic movement's pretty clear. It's going up the 15 corridor. Escondido's basically the last place before we exit San Diego County in a meaningful way. Not to write off Fallbrook and Bonsall, but you understand what I'm saying. And so to that end, candidly, this project feels kind of boring. And I'm specifically thinking of the elevations right off of Center City. So there are just a couple of recommendations that I have some questions along these lines. One of them is coloring. It seems to me that the choice here is of a very neutral color palette. It's basically all whites and maybe some beiges. There are a couple of pops of accent, but nothing really stands out. And I'm wondering if a third color choice, especially on the Center City and Valley intersections where there's the highest visibility, was considered. I'm thinking something that is totally in alignment here with the overall color palette, but just something that's like visually it stands out. So that's one. Another is the incorporation. I'm just going to list them and then let you all tackle this however it makes sense. Another would be the incorporation of more like decorative or ceramic tiles, especially around key entry points, windows, that sort of thing. Something that, again, as you drive by, it just sort of catches your eye and feels like, oh, wow, that's an intentional touch. It's a moment of like, wow, this is really interesting. Something that feels authentic to the architecture, but also doesn't feel builder grade. It feels a little more custom. Another is looking at the designs here. It appears to me, looking at the designs and also at the kind of the write-up, it feels like everything's very flat, like there's not a lot of articulation here. And I'm just wondering, can we recess these windows a little bit and maybe even give the inlet some coloring? And to this end, I'm thinking of a recent project that came before the commission near my house. It was a Beazer development, single-family residences, but they followed the same sort of Spanish Mediterranean design aesthetic, and they were able to just do some slight recessing with the windows, made them a little more interesting. And I'm thinking, the elements that I do see incorporated, stuff like the little crosswork at the top, that's cool in the design, but it's hard to see at 45 miles an hour. Or at my preferred speed, somewhere near 60. Don't tell EPD, but we all know what we do on Center City. And so, if you're blowing past, I want something that stands out a little bit more than like a 6-inch by 11 3/4 inch little design. You know what I'm saying? These are both recommendations that I'm trying, when I was putting this together and thinking about how can we achieve this, I wanted something that would come in at a very nominal price point, something that would add no more than maybe $1,000 or $2,000 per door, so that it's a rounding error on the overall purchase price, doesn't hopefully add a tremendous amount of lift. Color choice, it's this color versus that color, for example. I'm going to recommend one other thought here, and this is something that would add a little bit more to the price point, but I think would be interesting, at least on the Center City kind of aesthetic. I would really have loved it if there was a way to orient these properties so that we had that sort of walkable front door sort of style that you've done on Valley Parkway, also do it on Center City. But I recognize with the layout of the lot, that's not achievable. So in light of that, if there could be some sort of like, I don't know, I'm looking for the actual name here. I'm sorry, one second. Like some sort of like exposed rafter trails at the top that make the roof line a little more interesting, or if that's not possible, something like the, what do you call that, the Juliet style balcony, the wrought iron black Juliet style balcony that kind of just pops out, 6 inches or so. But again, it's just something that's just a visually interesting and just adds to the kind of story element of this space. Those are some recommendations, but overall, I would love to hear, were those considered? What within, this, and all of this can be anchored in the code. I have the code sections here. But what if this was discussed, and how did we land on the kind of aesthetic we landed on?
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that inquiry. Throughout the project's review, we went through multiple design review portions with staff to prepare it for the Planning Commission hearing. Notably, we worked with the architect specifically on their inspirational style. Not to say to agree with the term boring. However, some of the flat architectural styles, the limited recessing, and the limited articulation elements are by design. This is specifically calling to, as I mentioned in the presentation, architect Irving Gill, which has a more simplistic nature of the actual development and the architectural style as proposed. We did get a few enhancements here and there. However, with the architectural style, it was a bit limiting from what they were proposed. And again, the architectural style for Irving Gill is suitable based on the Mercado area plan's goal for these Hispanic architectures, again, contributing from that Santa Barbara style and continuing with what is intended for the area. And staff, through these review processes and multiple meetings and discussions with the architect, found that the design is, while limited in articulation, would be appropriate for the recommendations from the downtown specific plan.
Yeah, so I appreciate that it's suitable. I want it to be excellent. So that's what this commissioner is pushing for. And with respect to the flat style, again, it's a choice. The challenge that I have with it is that we have so much modern architecture going up everywhere right now, and it's all very generic. One of the things I do appreciate about what this applicant and their architect did was that they didn't just go the boring sort of, modern look with everything flat, and call it the future. They actually tried to incorporate something that was tying into Escondido's historic sort of Spanish heritage. But I would love to see us lean into that more. And again, I'm really pushing on it here versus some other projects we've had come before us because of the location and because I do feel like this could really be a sort of one of the points that builds that center of gravity in downtown. And I would just love to see it. Now, again, I'm very sensitive to this as being a missing middle project and trying to make it affordable. I don't want them to come back with something that's going to drive the price up tens of thousands of dollars, because that's how this ends up going, right? The consumer, it's a pass-through, I get it. So, what I'm really trying to just push on is how can we achieve something that's somewhere between $1,000 and $4,000 per door, but that can just make it pop just a little bit more, right? Make it stand out, make it be a little more visually interesting. That's it for me.
Staying with that theme, I'd kind of like to hear from the architect or owner representative regarding Commissioner Stevie's concerns or Vice Chair Stevie's concerns, and see if there's something that maybe can be done to move Commissioner or Vice Chair Stevie's position from a soft no to something better.
Absolutely. Yeah, it sounds to us that, aesthetically, is that on correctly? Yep. You very good? Okay. That, the aesthetics are very important here, and they were important to the applicant as well. They actually worked quite hard at making this work, but we definitely understand that there's always some little room for improvement there, and this is a kind of a marquee corner. And I think part of the goal was to juxtapose some of the other stuff in the area, like the senior living and what's happening there with those, big block and colors, to really just like, oh wait, that's completely different than that. And so we didn't want to overdo color. But I think there's some opportunity, and I'll let Jay speak to it, to make some tweaks to take your advice and make that work.
Yeah, Vice Chair Stevie, we are very willing to work with you and the staff. Like Alex said, we've worked on a lot of these feedback from there before. We've tried to incorporate a lot of the features that you're talking about. It's part of the plan. We have a lot of recessed windows. We can make them more recessed. On the color scheme, we're totally with you. We're very flexible. We can change the color scheme to make it more pop out. The original vision was more like, the Irving kind of style of architecture over here. But we're pretty flexible on some of those needs, to make sure we can get you on the approval side of the project. And like I said, we'll keep the cost very low. We'll work, if you're okay with, we can work with the staff and add some features that try to meet your requirements. Like I said, we have a whole list of stuff that we've already included in our architectural drawings, and we'll enhance them. That's not a problem at all.
Okay, thank you. I've actually got some questions for, while the applicant's up here, I do have a question for the applicant. The guest parking, certainly appreciate that guest parking was provided, especially in close proximity to the transit station where a reduction in parking is very typical. So I do appreciate that. What sort of measures do you guys come up with in the rules and regulations through the HOA that make sure that the property owners are, parking their cars in the garage and not taking up all the guest spots? Because, as we know, people put their stuff in the garage and all of a sudden they're parking out on the street. We don't have that opportunity here.
No.
And because this is ownership and there is probably more of a need for this guest parking, I just want to make sure that you've taken that under consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. Storm Properties specializes in this for sale kind of middle product, and so they definitely understand that. And as you know, they'll probably sit on the board as they go through the sales process and ensure that the HOA properly manages this. There'll be a essentially parking management process that happens with the CC&Rs that is completely enforceable by the HOA. And so and as you know, this is an ownership situation. So once they kind of, after the first few years and it's all sold out, then they'll go ahead and, it'll self-regulate through that. But of course, this is an ownership situation, so those folks will be absolutely not allowed to store in their garages. The garages will be allowed to be checked for storage to make sure that there's not, it's not a pack rat central there and that their cars are parked in the guest parking illegally. So, and as you pointed out, the requirement was for really no additional parking beyond the garage parking, but obviously that's not going to work. And so they found a sweet spot that they feel will absolutely be achievable for them. And at the end of the day, they got to sell these units to folks, and that's the most important thing.
Okay, thank you. For staff, the only question I've got about the reduction in density, kind of below the minimum level. So I understood how the mathematics worked on all of this, and there's units that are transferred to the density unit, the unit density bank. Is there a threshold by which we ultimately will hit where we cannot move units to the density bank, or we can't go below the minimum density level?
I will admit I am uncertain of that question. Ms. Assistant Director?
Thank you, Commissioner Weiler, for that question. So for the specifics of the downtown specific plan, there isn't a cap on the amount of units that can be transferred into the bank. Eventually, I guess theoretically, if every property were developed, we could max out development within the downtown. That would then trigger new development needs, and people would have to pull units out of the bank. But for the purposes of the downtown specific plan, the bank doesn't have a maximum cap.
Understood. I guess I was going beyond the downtown specific plan, and I know that this project, it doesn't affect you guys, but we need to make sure that we provide a certain amount of density throughout the city, and moving the units around like we do to make sure that we're meeting our RENA numbers. I wasn't sure if there was some point where, we just can't go below the minimum density level because we'll miss our RENA numbers.
Yes, so It's not quite that direct one-to-one. We are subject to the provisions of Senate Bill 166, which is no net loss. That is the large table calculation that's been provided. And that's as it pertains to parcels identified within the city that are on the suitable sites inventory, which is a list of APNs throughout the city, over 800 sites that have our total theoretical RENA identified. So this site is on the suitable sites inventory, therefore we have to balance the checkbook, so to speak, to make sure we have adequate hypothetical units left to meet our RENA. We also do have provisions within the municipal code under Article 6 for residential that dictate certain zones, our higher density zones, along with specific plan areas, including this one, have a 70% minimum density development standard. This is below that 70% because there is a provision within the code that says that can be accepted through the plan development permit process as long as it doesn't impede the city's ability to meet our regional housing needs. So as long as we can balance the book, so to speak, with the lower threshold and they go through the proper permitting process, there is the ability to develop below. And that's why there is such a in-depth analysis in your staff report about meeting that suitable sites inventory, because that is the housing need that we need to meet.
Terrific. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't think I have any more questions for the applicant or staff at this point.
There we go. I do have one, I guess, really to piggyback. I appreciate Commissioner Stevie's comments and all the comments made thus far, but I do agree. I also appreciate the applicant and their consultants and the efforts you guys have gone through to make something that, by and large, I really like and appreciate. I do have one personal concern that's sort of in line with Commissioner Stevie, and that is, yes, I agree, this is a high visibility opportunity for the city of Escondido. I do like what you're doing, but I have seen in other developments throughout the city something that bothers me, that I don't like to see in Escondido, and I've seen it. When I look at developments in other communities, coastal communities, things that I really like, I look at what we've done in a few places in Escondido, and I say, oh, I really almost like it. It's like 95% of what I like, and it's just a little different from what I see in other communities that I really like. And I'll be honest with you, one of those things is the zero overhang. To me, I've seen it in a few developments, and it just bugs me every time I see it. And I think it plays into, at least from my perspective, what you're talking about in terms of the look is boring to me. The look says, other communities look great. Escondido looks a little toned down. And so while this is, and I appreciate Commissioner Stevie's concern for, hey, let's dress this up and let's not put a big burden on the applicant in doing so. Perhaps what I'm suggesting is a little more so. But I would love to see, and I guess this is for consideration along with the other items that you're considering is, boy, would it take much to say put an overhang on this? I think when you're talking about a three-story, I look at the elevations and I see, look, we got a three-story, pretty straight up three-story wall with no overhang. It looks like a cardboard box. Putting that overhang on can make a big difference aesthetically, I believe. That's my thought for consideration to the applicant. I would also ask, in terms of those comments and the back and forth we've had from a procedural standpoint, we're contemplating the approval of this project tonight, or the recommendation to City Council. How does the consideration for small changes like this play into that process for us?
Great question. So the commission could choose to make a motion on the project and add a condition of approval for a variety of things. They could either motion for a condition stipulating specific items, or they could motion to include a design review condition, taking into consideration those recommendations from the commission that were articulated this evening. So those are two possibilities.
With a second, the option of a design review, who would perform that design review? Who would have discretion?
So you could delegate that to city staff based on the feedback, or you could theoretically condition it to return to you.
Thank you for those options. Any other questions for the applicant or staff?
I have, is the architect here?
No, sorry, they couldn't make it.
We couldn't make it, okay. There are a lot of people here, so. All right. I was looking at the guy in the glasses, I'm gonna be honest. He's like, if there's an architect, it's that guy. Sorry, man, I typecasted you just now. Okay, well, yeah, I'm just, I would love to have that discussion with them, but that's all right.
Do we have any public speakers?
No.
Okay. Is there anyone present tonight who wishes to speak that did not put in a slip? Okay. We'll go ahead and close the public testimony portion, and we will move to comments and discussion on the topic by the commission. Any discussion? Stan?
You know, my fellow commissioners, they brought up some very good points. I understand where they're coming from. I felt kind of the same way as far as the architecture was concerned, that it did seem a little plain. However, when I really start looking at it and thinking about the look that is trying to be achieved, which is different than the standard modern architecture that we've been seeing continuously, this provides something a little bit different. Based on the explanation that I heard that from staff there was a lot of discussion about this, and it wasn't overlooked, it was very intentional to have this sort of look. The way that the buildings are laid out, especially along Center City Parkway, it's not a long, continuous row of townhomes. There's actually, you see one side of the building several different times as you go down, so there's a break in between. So I appreciate that, because as you go by, there is that breakup. So where you really have the long kind of building look, it's on the interior. It's not, except for the 6 units or so that are along Valley Parkway, but for the most part, that's all interior. So the people that want to purchase this, they would have to like it, you know, and enjoy that is the architecture that they prefer, because they bought there, they spent a lot of money. But I do understand what you're saying, because I had the thought myself. If there is something that the applicant can do to help this, yeah, I think it would be a good thing. So I'm not discounting certainly what the vice chair and the chair had said about the architecture, but I do understand the concept behind it. And then also the historic nature, I guess, that it is more that Spanish type of look as opposed to the modern look that we've been getting over and over again. So I do like that. You know, a lot of, and this is why I brought up the guest parking, you know, a lot of the developments that we're getting are, especially in the higher density range, and if they're in close proximity to the transit station, boy, they're not providing the parking that we feel, and I think we feel as a commission that's really necessary. So I do like that. I do like that there is access to the trail, to the bike trail, some bicycle parking consideration. for those that wish to utilize that trail. I've utilized that trail. I like it, except for the homeless part. That's a struggle. And I've mentioned that before, that it would be really nice if the city was able to at least have a patrol that kind of goes down, especially that section of the trail between really Hale and all the way over to Center City Parkway. It's certainly not inviting for my wife. I don't particularly care for it either, but that's not the applicant's issue here. It's just an observation. But I do like that trail. I think it'll be good for the folks that live here. It gives them a pretty quick shot right to the downtown area. So I'm supportive of this project because it is ownership and what's being provided. And I think that kind of concludes my thoughts on this. I'd like to hear what the other commissioners have to say before we actually have a motion.
I'm in support of the project as well, but I do agree with everything that Vice Chair Stevie mentioned. There is a reason why in the design community, builder grade is a bad word. And I do think that we need to protect the chance we have to create, a mark in our city with these sites that are coming available. Escondido is kind of the last frontier for people to move here, for it to develop. And this is the opportunity we have to control that development in a way that hits the direction we want to see, which is a higher market, price tag. And while I do agree that the project is fantastic in general, I particularly think that the floor plans are fantastic. As a designer, I can appreciate that. I know that's not up for review, but the kitchens are really nice. Not gonna lie. The kitchen islands are great. But again, it's really critical and important at this time for Escondido to ensure that we are hitting the mark with our design standards and guidelines for projects coming forth. So I agree with Vice Chair Stevie on that completely. But I am also in support of the project.
The project sounds very good to me. My question of the Vice Commissioner, or really the process in general, is there has to be an alternative, right? I mean, we can talk about what our particular vision of what this should look like, but I mean, that opens up the Pandora box to what things can look like. So if they were to accept the idea of, adding some things, what's the process? Do we approve it conditionally tonight, and then the Planning Commission works with the applicants? What would that look like?
Yes, so if the commission chose to make a recommendation to the city council that included a new condition of approval for design review, then that would be added to the draft conditions of approval and make its way to city council for final decision, and staff would identify in the council staff report the commission's concerns regarding the project, regarding design, their recommendation with the added condition, and we'd make sure that council is aware of that. And then ultimately, it would be the council's decision.
So the city council will be given options
They would
on
be,
the final design.
They would not be given final design options as a result of what's recommended here. They would be given the recommendation from the commission, the literal recommendation, with the added condition for future design review changes per the concerns raised here.
There, Ms. Morones, there was also an option where we could have this come back before us, before going up before council, is that correct? With the incorporation of our design recommendations. and let me be super clear, I don't mean that we would say explicitly, come back, like appeal to the code and say, change this color, add this overhang, whatever. It's more of, I think you and your team understand directionally what we would like to achieve. And so you would come back, having worked with the applicant to achieve that, and then we would fully approve it for the commission, for the council at that point. Is that an option?
So that is a different option. That would be remanding the item back to staff with the information conveyed to the applicant and us returning for this process with the revised designs. If you were to add a condition of approval to the recommendation, this would not come back before it goes to council. It would continue to council. If council took the Planning Commission's recommendation of that added design review condition and approved the project, then the applicant would, prior to whatever that mechanism is, prior to building permit issuance, they would need to go through that design review process, and that is at that point where either based on the commission's recommendation and the council's ultimate decision, that design review would either come back to the commission for input, or it would go to staff for input, and then an action made on their change design.
So in the interest of thinking about the applicant's finances and staff's bandwidth, if we remand it for staff, how quickly could we turn this around? And for the applicant, just so that we know how much of a cost burden are we actually talking about? Because, changing the color, we can say it's not a cost, but then I don't know who you have to pay to make that happen. And so it would be great to have line of sight on how much you're sweating right now with respect to the cost.
Yes, I can speak with regards to staff capacity and process if it was remanded to a separate time. I am uncertain of the timeline that would be provided by the applicant and their architect. However, the project would have to be renoticed again. It would have to go through the formal process again and potentially put in a further delay. I would estimate at least a month to come back, but depending a lot on what happens in that interim process.
But are we talking about, I'm contemplating an easier step, and so help me understand this, because if we're specific about not recommendations, but conditions we put in, there doesn't have to be, once we put in those conditions in our recommendation to City Council, there doesn't have to be a revisiting of the matter by us or staff, does there?
Not necessarily. So I want to be clear that we've touched on 3 potential options. One is to essentially table the item to a subsequent planning commission date. So there's no action that will go to the city council from the tabling of the item. It would go back to staff. Staff would work with the applicant team to address the design concerns raised by the commission this evening. We would renotice the project to a future meeting, return with the updated designs, and essentially do this again for an ultimate recommendation of approval or denial to the council. That's option 1. The second option would be to recommend approval or denial. If you recommend approval with the condition for design changes, the commission could stipulate specific line item design changes in that condition with no requirement to do any future design, quote unquote, design review process. Third option is kind of the deferral. You will go back to design review, whether that's back to the commission for that design review at a post-approval process or to staff for ultimate decision based on the feedback we've heard here tonight would be up to the motioning commissioner, but that is the third process.
I would be in favor of that second option. Also, because there's a possibility that a redesign is not as good as what they brought tonight. Just because we're recommending to say, hey, reimagine this, that doesn't mean it's going to be any better. So that's why I would say that we should approve the project, because overall, I think it's a good project. I think that there's widespread agreement on that. And we shouldn't push the can down the road or create more costs for the city and the applicants based on the possibility that the design could be improved based upon what a few of the commissioners want. So that's just my 2 cents.
I'm of the same opinion, and I would like to know what each commissioner feels. If we're agreed on at least which of the 3 options we're at before we get into some other questions about it. But from my standpoint, I'm in agreement with you. I'd like to be specific and not call for a deferred design review again.
Chair Spear, can we hear real quick from the applicant just on the cost question?
Yes, and I was going to suggest the same, but I would, before you do, I know you had an opportunity to comment on Commissioner Stevie's ideas. You really didn't have an opportunity. I'd like to know what you think of, for example, my specific comment, which was, would it be a deal breaker for you? Would it be a backbreaker to do an overhang as well?
We appreciate the discussion and appreciate us giving the opportunity to come back over here. We can add those elements that you guys are asking for not a relatively lot of more cost. Like, again, it depends, how much the scope of that addition is. So we will work. So what we would suggest is, if that approval is fine, is obviously from our perspective, we can get approved today. We can work with the staff and then come back for a separate design review. So the project overall is approved. All we got to finalize with the Planning Commission is some of the details on the designing and the overhang. And those are easier changes for us to have our architect over here. We could even have a working session, right, and finalize the answer pretty quickly at that design review to make sure it satisfies what you guys are looking for. But from the overall perspective, it keeps our project moving forward.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, part of the importance of that is that we are already scheduled for a council, and noticing on that hasn't happened yet, but obviously that's June 10th, so this would throw that off if we have to have anything come back. But I think we are looking for your trust to work with your staff, and we fully took a lot of notes here, and I think we have a good sense of what you might be looking for. So yeah, so that approval today that allows us to get to that council on June 10th, it would be really important to us, and that gives us the opportunity, again, like you said, financing and other things. If we don't lose that time, we can put that money kind of back into these little features and make this work. So that would be very helpful.
Sounds then that you're agreed with us in terms of you would like to have an answer today.
Yes.
And because you mentioned design review, however.
Again, for us, the ideal situation, if we just put it out there, would be that you kind of let staff do that design review, and they come back and tell you what we came up with, but it's really not another approval process back here. That would be ideal, so we can continue to June 10th.
I anticipate that being that staff interprets our conditions are met, and there's no real issue with us reviewing that. It's just you making sure, yes, you met the conditions, the applicant met the conditions that staff might have put in. Is that how you see it?
Staff would recommend that if the commission decides to motion with a condition of approval for a subsequent design review, that you articulate specifically which facets of the design features you expect to see addressed by the applicant. So maybe not the level of specificity, but paint color, additional articulation, something of that nature, so staff has the ability to know the category of expectation from the commission. Otherwise, the commission could opt to defer the design review back to yourself as a recommending reviewing body. It wouldn't be a decision on the design. It would be to provide feedback on the design. Those are the options.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah, so coming back to this discussion, maybe one of the ways, I think that the Valley Parkway aesthetic articulation there, I don't really have too much of a problem with it. I see what you're saying about the overhang, and that makes a lot of sense. I do feel like that is a feature of higher end communities, and if it can be incorporated relatively straightforwardly in a way that doesn't drive the cost per door up in an exorbitant way, I think that we should think about that for this space. It's really the center city just the center city visualization and just how that looks that is kind of throwing me off. I think, paint color can solve some of that. I think the maybe just some more recessed, more of a recess in some of the windows so it's not all just kind of flat. It looks flat, and I don't know how much of that's a function of the actual design, how much of it functions of the rendering. One other thing that might help solve some of this is landscaping. I feel like it's something we don't talk about very often, but for example, we've got a lot of mature trees on Center City, and when this project comes in, what if there were some mature trees that created a sort of peekaboo effect where, you're not seeing just flat wall, empty space looking down a bunch of flat walls, flat wall, empty space, but there was, trees in between so that you're catching glimpses, mature trees in between, so you're catching glimpses of the architecture, but the trees sort of add that more immediate visual plane. And again, I'm saying a mature tree because, you put a little stick in the ground and 30 years later it's visually interesting. An investment in what? We're looking at 8 trees, maybe 9 trees along the Center City as I'm looking at this here. If half of them or more were actually mature and had a bigger canopy, then that might help solve some of that too, and that could be a relatively lower cost per door way of doing that. So just some thought there.
Do you have a Center City elevation?
So we have here the general rendering for the drive along Center City Parkway. Of note as well, was not demonstrated on the landscaping plan, was the 6-foot hedges that we provided along the bike trail fencing.
Those are great.
As well as currently, thank you. As well as currently the actual trees that are along Center City Parkway itself are not demonstrated on this rendering. Those are omitted for reference so you can actually see the architectural style. The trees that are shown are the ones that we saw in the landscape plan. The ones existing on Center City Parkway are not currently shown. So there'd be additional trees.
Well, but there really aren't that many trees on this site right now, right?
Right. My
Are
mention was
there
mostly-
any? I'm trying to picture it in my head.
On the site currently, no.
Yeah. So it's not as though it wouldn't solve the problem I'm trying to solve in the way I'm trying to solve it. So but looking at this, elevation, right? In between these buildings where there is otherwise a gap that just looks straight into the complex, imagine some bigger, more mature trees there that again are the more immediate line of sight. That combined with the hedge and some of these other stuff, I'm just, that might be easier to achieve visual interest than a whole bunch of architecture work, right? Just a thought. I don't know. No, I'm getting the professional shaking her head at me. I made a mistake.
I do love a good landscape, but no.
Do we have, I'm hearing specifics. If we were to try to outline this in specifics, I'm hearing color, recessed windows, overhang, and trees. 4 items.
I might drop trees on the advice of the expert. But at least, yeah. And then I'd also propose maybe the Juliet-style balcony. I don't know, something.
Why don't we put that as, with the recessed windows, why don't we call it 3-dimensional treatments and just lump that all in? 3-dimensional treatments. Okay. Does anyone have any other contemplations for condition items to be specific about? No?
Yeah, I guess the only other question I would have, and it's a part of the processing, would the enhancements that we're discussing on the architecture, is it the intent to have those enhancements reviewed by staff and completed at least on some of the renderings or something before it goes before the city council, so the city council can see the results of the discussion that we've had? I'm not sure of the timing. I know on other projects we've done this, and it's actually been, more or less deferred prior to building permit or during the building permit process, sorry.
That would be up to the commission as part of a motion with a modified addition to a condition of approval. So you could opt either way For example, on the Conway Capistrano Shores project, the design review was deferred to prior to building permit, so it returned to the commission after all of the approvals, similar to what the applicant has requested. However, the commission has the purview to say incorporate such design changes prior to going to council. I would imagine that would have implications on the timeframe. We generally give applicants a tentative date of council based on their date for planning commission. Obviously, there are things that can come up, such as continuances, tabling, and so that may be something that would not achieve a June 10th city council date. And just as an FYI for everyone, the council will not be holding any meetings for the month of July, I believe, at this point.
You know what, I'd like to hear from the applicant just one more time for clarification. As we're having this discussion and you're kind of seeing where we're getting, which is, first of all, a majority of us appear that, yeah, we like the project, we want to approve it, that we do got some changes that we want to have occur. How would you prefer to have this, to have us condition this to meet our concerns, while at the same time, I would prefer that any money that you spent go right back into the project as opposed to carrying cost, any other cost because of a delay?
Right. Yeah, I think that is an important factor in this. So, I think you've heard a lot of different options here. Ideally, we head towards that June 10th with the ability to, it sounds like there was an opportunity in the past where you've had this come, either back to commission for some design review afterwards, so that we can kind of take the time to do that and not rush staff. A lot of this is also just a respect for staff. They have a lot going on, and to have that try to, work all that out. Of course, we could come up with some designs in a week and be ready to give them back, but can that get worked through by staff and approved by June 10th? Probably not. And so I think that is a concern for us. So if there's an opportunity, ideally, we'd be able to go afterwards, right?
Yeah. I mean, so we have done this in other cities where we have had this condition, like Veronica said. We've gone back to a subcommittee of the planning commission, to the whole planning commission, depending on how the planning commissioners thought they wanted to review. So like in city of Rancho Cucamonga, we did a project. We went to 2 commissioners, but they had similar concerns and they wanted us to add things. So, I mean, colors, recessed windows, mature trees, those are pretty easy to add. They don't add a lot of costs from our perspective. We can add overhangs. They do add more character, so we can work on how the Santa Barbara style versus some of those things. But again, those things can be easily done. So from our perspective, what we would request is that we continue to our city council date and then condition us to come back to the planning commission or a subcommittee of the planning commission. And that way we can work with the staff, make sure the staff like the changes. We've done through, like Alex said, four set of revisions of feedback and then modifying and feedback and modifying. And we don't mind doing a couple more, but it does take time, like Jason highlighted. So that, I think, would be, best from our side and hopefully help achieve the goals that you guys are trying to achieve, is the product that's finally approved and built, matches the vision that you guys have, what goes on that intersection, and then those enhancements we can easily work with it. But those are building related, doesn't impact anything else on the site. So everything else can be proceeded, civil plans, traffic plans, everything else can be worked and approved. And then while we are working on the building design, which is usually the last thing to go on the site anyways, it gives us plenty of time to work with you. And if you have more feedback, then we can always go back and forth. Like one project, I remember going back like 2 times or 3 times to get to that point. And that was fine with us, didn't impede us.
Thank you for that very much.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, I kind of prefer that, at least from my perspective, I like all the discussion that we've had. The applicant seems willing to do some enhancements, which I think is really good. I don't want to slow down the process. I think it's important that we continue forward because these are some add-ons. Now, the discussion really kind of comes back to, do we want to actually see the proposed changes? And how can we do that? And can we do that more as an informational item so that we don't have, and I don't know if we have to notice that, but so that it's more of a review and input from Planning Commission to give staff any enhanced direction. I guess that's what I'm sort of leaning toward, as opposed to a whole nother review, approval, something that's formal enough, but not formal enough to require a noticed hearing. Is that even possible?
That is possible. The design review would be a current business item. It wouldn't require a public notice. There wouldn't be an action from the commission. It would be providing feedback on the design proposal.
Okay, and the reason I'm thinking that way is, of course, we want this project to move forward and such, but I want to make sure that the city council is hearing what it is that we're trying to accomplish here, and they're seeing us implement the things that we would like to see, and there's just that slight bit of additional oversight. Not to take that away from staff. I think staff does a fantastic job. But the commission has a few concerns, and I want to make sure that those concerns are addressed. So that's kind of my input.
Speaking from my particular specific item, and this probably doesn't apply to all of them, but I could suggest a minimum 12-inch overhang, and I don't need to see it again. That particular item is done. That may not be true for some of the other items, but I would defer and ask you guys, as you consider the other items, are they in a similar category where we really don't need to see them again, or is there advantages to having some design review after? What do you think? On your items, at least. And yours?
I mean, their architecture firm is highly qualified. I have no doubt that KTGY is not going to come back with something that meets our expectations.
I defer to Commissioner Maccaro.
You what?
I defer to Karen.
Okay. In light of that, we've discussed 3 particular items, I believe, and we've discussed an approach. Would somebody, is there any further discussion before I call? And would anyone like to put forth a motion?
I would move to approve the project as designed with the additional items as discussed by the Planning Commission as far as additions to the architecture. If the chair could list those out, because I know he was taking copious notes here.
Help me, I'm going to craft this, but providing a variety in color on the facade, number 1. Number 2, providing variety in 3D treatments on the facade, including, or with possibilities including window recesses and Juliet balconies. And number 3, providing a minimum 12-inch overhang at the roof. Yeah?
And that would be the motion. I want to make sure that staff, if staff could do me a favor and reread the motion, I want to make sure that we're all on board with where this motion is intended to go.
Can we get the minutes clerk to read back that motion?
It was, I missed some of the notes, so I was trying to keep up with you guys. It was a motion to approve resolution number 2026-04 with the modified conditions of approval, and then I would include the items after that. Okay, so that was the providing variety of, and then after that I was trying to
A variety of colors in the facade,
okay, variety of colors of the
number
facade.
1. Number 2, providing 3-dimensional treatments such as window recesses and Juliet balconies as examples.
I'll need that one more time.
Sorry. Providing a variety in three-dimensional treatments to the facade, such as
Okay.
window recesses or Juliet balconies.
Okay.
And number 3, providing a minimum 12-inch overhang at the roof line.
Provide minimum 12-inch overhang.
Roof overhang,
Oh, okay.
yeah. Okay.
Can I just clarify, Commissioner? Oh, sorry, were you going to
I
clarify?
was going to say, and we need to end that with pursuant to staff review prior to issuance of building permits, or whatever the wording is appropriate for that.
Chair Spear, we had one clarification if we might be able to make on one of those
Go ahead.
recommendations, the overhang.
Go ahead.
Wanted to make sure, yeah. go
Well,
ahead.
I think two questions over there. Is the treatment, again, try to manage the cost, is that along Center City and West Valley Parkway, or all the buildings on the
Good
inside?
question.
Because the
But
inside
that
is-
will add a lot of cost to do every
Right.
single building.
I think, and I'll defer to you, all of you, but you in particular mentioned your concern was along Center City. Were you anticipating treatments everywhere?
Throughout the entire, no.
Okay. Anyone else?
Center City.
Center City.
Center City.
That was my impression, that it was just going to be the,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay, if we could just add the Center City to the.
Yeah, if that's good with us, because that minimizes the cost, it adds the vision that you guys are
Yeah.
trying to achieve, and that helps us a lot. Okay,
Thank you for clarifying that question.
sure, thank
Although,
you so
I
much.
guess I should ask, there is line of sight along the bike path.
So I would recommend, to
Yes.
avoid further designing at the dais, that the condition defer design review prior to building permit issuance, as Commissioner Weiler pointed out, with staff addressing these 3 topical areas. However, as you're finding out, there are components to this where adding a 12-inch overhang to only select facades could create other design issues and implications. So by allowing staff to conduct the design review prior to building permit issuance, we can then work with the applicant to see what that would look like. And if it looks questionable, then the Director of Development Services always has the option to defer that back to the Planning Commission for input. And knowing the extensive and exhaustive conversation on these 3 areas, if anything is questionable from staff, we will make the determination to bring it back as a current business item for input from the commission. That would be my recommendation based on just avoiding each individual facade design change here at the dais tonight.
I would like to actually dive as deeply into the weeds.
You know what, if I may, I'd like to rescind my motion and make a new motion.
Okay. Before you do, one last clarification. I was interpreting your question to mean with respect to the 3D treatments. Were you speaking to all of them, such as the overhang as well? Okay, just to be sure. Okay, go ahead.
The new motion would be much simpler, which is motion to approve the project as designed, with the exception of the architecture, which needs to go back to staff design review prior to, how was it?
Prior to building permit.
Prior to building permit. That's it.
So let me ask a question about that, because there are 2 goals here, I think. One of them is that the concerns of the commission be incorporated into the project, but the other being that we communicate to city council for their review with our concerns.
I think the motion should still stand. I think we can recommend that staff at least emphasizes our discussion and our concerns, and specifically the 3 or 4 items that were brought up, so that they, if they don't happen to listen to our discussion, staff presents that. And the amount of discussion that we had on this to make sure that the architecture was good and appropriate, but I think staff's got good direction on the items that we're most concerned about.
Yeah.
And I'm confident that they can do it without having a list built into the motion itself.
Question for staff on that matter, though, is we had discussed this at a previous planning commission meeting, our desire to at times communicate information directly to council for their deliberation. We had discussed a mechanism in that, and I don't fully recall what that was. Okay, do you recall what that mechanism, how that would come about?
I can speak to that if you'd like,
Yeah.
Veronica. So I believe it was stressed that the commission could direct staff to make sure to put into the staff report certain items that they wanted to emphasize so the city council was aware of.
Thank you. That sounds good. And that
And that doesn't have to be a part of the motion, that's just
Correct.
part of,
So we could
Correct.
clean the motion up as you were explaining and put that mechanism in. That's a good way to go. Okay.
Yes, and just to clarify, that part doesn't need to be in the motion. That would complicate the motion, I
Yeah.
think, unnecessarily.
Yeah.
That can be outside.
I'd prefer that the motion stay very simple. Because if we start complicating it, then all of a sudden we go down a road that we may not want to go
So
down.
let's review what we've just discussed. I think what we're saying is that we want to simplify the motion put forth. You want to do that. And
So
then-
that's the motion right now.
Yeah. And then we would accompany that motion with a request that staff communicate in the staff report to city council the specifics of our request with relation to the architectural treatments. And then there would be staff's review of that at some future time to make sure that that was complied with. Is that correct?
Yes, the motion is for staff to do that the project is approved as designed. Staff does a design review prior to building permits.
Yeah. Okay. In accordance with what we put forth to staff
Yes.
and whatever else they have, of course. Okay. So that's a simplified motion. Is that clear?
I believe that's clear, and we can
Okay.
always listen to the transcript to get the exact wording, but I think Commissioner Weiler's motion was clear.
Okay.
I second.
We'll call for a vote.
So if I may confirm, it's, so motion to approve resolution number 2026-04 as designed with conditions for city staff to review the architecture prior to permit issuance?
Prior
So-
to building permit, sorry, go ahead.
I had approve as designed, approve resolution as designed with exception of architecture with subsequent staff design review prior to building permit issuance.
And this would obviously contain my recommendation for bright hot pink as the preferred color.
They're going to love that.
Yeah, that's going to look amazing.
So
You have that?
I
Not
think,
the
I
pink,
think,
not the pink part. Everything
I think
else?
I have, yeah, I'll
Okay.
leave that part out.
Go ahead and we'll call for a vote then.
Okay, so motion to approve resolution number 2026-04 as designed with subsequent staff design review before building permit issuance. Chair Spear,
Yes.
Vice Chair Stevie,
Yes.
Commissioner Weiler,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarro,
Yes.
Commissioner Gustafson.
Yes.
So the vote is 5-0 to approve resolution number 2026-04 as designed with subsequent staff design review before building permit issuance.
Perfect. Thank you. And congratulations. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. That was good. All right. Are there any written or oral communications on items not on the agenda?
No.
Okay. Planning Commissioners report. Does anyone have anything to report? Okay. City planners report.
Yes. First, I would like to introduce Garrett Smith, our new city planner, who's sitting with us this evening, and got to watch the sausage get made this evening. Garrett, I don't know if you'd like to come up and address the commission and say a little bit about yourself.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. Garrett Smith, the new city planner. Thank you for Veronica and the team. This is day number 2, so I'm still getting acquainted with the local dynamics. I guess a little bit about myself. I've been in the land use and development field for a little over 25 years. I've worked in Southern California coastal communities just before COVID, so I've worked here in the past and just relocated back down from Washington State. Most of my background has been in public sector, city, county, and state governments, but all in the land use and development field. So really nice to be back in the area. Really excited to see where I can help the community, help the commission. So we'll definitely be in communication if there's topics that come up, and we've discussed internally to the office. I think in the past couple of years, there really hasn't been, a lot of staff capacity to do more than just keeping up with permitting. So, I mean, ideally, it would be great if there were things that were being requested by the commission that we could accommodate, whether that be additional workshops. Obviously, there's a lot of design interest, which is great to hear. So I have a pre-architecture background, so it's sort of passion of mine. I'm glad you guys have an interest. But yeah, I'm glad to be on board. I believe as of the next meeting, I will probably be tagging in while Veronica tags out. She's been wearing, as you probably are aware, quite a number of hats, and has some probably focus she needs to expend on other items too, since now we've got some additional staff coming her way. Any questions for me?
What part of Washington?
I grew up in eastern Washington, so Spokane area. Did my undergraduate at UW, but I've been working as an assistant director for Whatcom County, so north of Seattle, north of Bellingham, right up against the Canadian border, more of a rural community. So it would be nice to refocus back on more city government, where there is infrastructure, probably a little bit easier to get housing done. There's a lot of demand, as you well know.
They told you it was going to be easier to get housing done?
From the infrastructure side. Yeah, no more having to deal with just floodplains, septics, and do I have approval for wells that are, again, land use law and water law. So, but no, I'm really glad to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome, and I think we're all looking forward to working with you as we move forward, and certainly sad to see Ms. Morones not be a part of our group here on the far end of the dais, but all the time that you've served here has been much appreciated because you bring a wealth of information and a very steady hand to some of the questions that we come up with. So it was very much appreciated, and I'm sure we'll see you around. But thank you.
And congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I will just go over that we will be having a May 26th Planning Commission meeting where Garrett will be sitting at the dais. I will probably still be here. I'll fade out in the background, but I will more than likely show up occasionally to Planning Commission. So you haven't gotten rid of me in full. But at the May 26th meeting, there will be the continuance of the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. We are holding briefings for that item. Most of you are scheduled for briefings, so there's still time if you have not yet been scheduled. And we will also be we anticipate both meetings in June occurring, so just to get your calendars primed.
All right. Any last minute comments by anyone? All right, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting.